This is the story of the Durban Harbour from its early beginnings in southern Africa's premier port. Discovered by Vasco da Gama in 1497, what we now know as the Port of Durban was once a mangrove-lined lagoon with wild animals patrolling the beaches. For centuries, many vessels ended their voyages to our province as shipwrecks. During the 16th and 17th century, navigation was poor and ships were overloaded. But in November 1823, the fate of the Port of Durban was sealed when bad weather forced Lieutenant James King and George Farewell to sail into the shallow and dangerous lagoon of Port Natal. They dropped anchor at a swampy mangrove-covered island, which they named Salisbury Island. Spotting an opportunity, they began trading ivory from this location, which would become the main hub of activity in the port's early years. By the 1840s, global trade saw a need for ships to call at the Port of Durban, which was no easy feat. Known as the most dangerous port in the world, ships were frequently wrecked traversing the shallow sandbar, while others would return to their home ports still fully laden to avoid the port's dangerously shallow estuary. Passengers were loaded into wicker baskets and lowered onto pitching and rolling boats just to reach the shore. They were then transported by ox wagon along a rough bush road looking for the village of Durban, then called Port Natal. In 1842, the brig Sarah Bell was the first vessel to sail directly from England to Durban. This journey would have taken in the region of 4 months. In 1845, Captain William Bell from Scotland was appointed as both sea captain and harbour pilot. He had previously navigated his own ship, the Coach, in and out of the dangerous harbour without the aid of navigational charts. The resilient captain stood at the harbour entrance, piloting ships in and out of the harbour by shouting orders through a megaphone. Such was the danger involved in navigating through the sandbar and into the port that a public holiday was declared when the first steamship, the Sir Robert Peel, entered the port of Durban in 1852. In 1859, construction of a railway line between the point and the town began, and shortly thereafter, 3 whistles signaled the start of the first train service in Africa. On 16 November 1860, the SS Truro dropped anchor in Durban. On board were 340 Indians brought to Natal as indentured labourers. They were obliged to sign a 10-year contract to work for a pittance. Many were employed by South African railways, the harbour and shipping companies, and at the end of their contracts, some from the fishing grounds of India began commercial fishing in the abundant waters of Salisbury Island. In 1867, the Bluff Lighthouse was constructed. It was the only lighthouse on the east coast of Africa at the time. The 1880s saw great improvements to safety in the port, with harbour engineers Edward Innes and Cathcart Methven playing an important role in ensuring that deepening the harbour was a priority. The port's first dredger, Water Rat, was ordered by Innes in 1881 and built locally. It was responsible for reclaiming land to build wharves. By 1887, the depth of the harbour mouth had been increased from 2 meters to 3.5 meters. In 1888, harbour engineer Cathcart Methven persuaded the government to order a further 6 dredgers to increase the depth and expand the bay, and by 1892, the depth had increased from 4.5 meters to 5.5 meters. Between 1886 and 1904, 3.3 million tons of sand were removed from the inner harbour and the channel between the north and south piers, and the days when the depth of the bar and the harbour was a constant hazard were over. This was proven in 1904 when the largest ship in the world, Armadale Castle, successfully entered the port. The occasion signaled the end of the basket, as passengers could now disembark directly from the gangplank. Union Castle Line would sail between Durban and the UK each week for the next 72 years, a world record for a regular and punctual service. In 1904, dredging started for the Maiden, Kongela and Esplanade channels. Hundreds of acres of swampland were converted into wharves and industrial areas, all served by an efficient rail service. Water and electricity were offered at cheap rates, and large international companies such as Lever Brothers set up operations in Maiden Wharf to take advantage of Durban's convenient access to interior markets. On the 16th of July 1909, the sinking of SS Waratah served as a reminder of the dangers of life at sea. The sinking of the Waratah prompted the city to install a powerful radio station that could serve as a lifeline to ships in distress. The early 1900s saw great liners sailing in and out of the port. Cargo ships arrived with cargoes from the east, south and north, leaving heavily loaded with the products of Africa. The Prince Edward Graving Dock, built in 1919, was the largest dry dock in the world at the time. It would become a hub for ship repair activities over the next 100 years. Most of Durban's dock workers lived in hostels that surrounded the port. They were condemned to decades of struggle, segregation and hardship, lifting heavy cargo in unbearable heat. In the 1930s, flying boats flew regularly from the UK to Durban. They carried 16 to 24 passengers plus 5 tons of mail. In 1942, 12 German submarines began operating off the coast of Durban, sinking 12 ships, including the SS Nova Scotia, carrying 750 people, all of whom perished. To protect shipping, weekly convoys were organized at the port of Durban, escorted by British naval ships, and in 1943, the Royal Air Force sent twin-engine Catalina flying boats to patrol the coastline. More than 100,000 South Africans went north in the Second World War, and 3 million troops from allied nations passed through Durban Harbour. From the 1950s to the 1970s, Durban Harbour was crowded with passenger ships, including 5-star cruise ships that ran regular services across the globe. As the container, launched in 1956, became the main form of transportation for shipping cargo, Durban Container Terminal was built and opened in 1977 to handle the ever-growing volumes of this form of cargo. Today, the Port of Durban is South Africa's premier container, vehicle and liquid bulk port and is among the busiest ports in Africa. It has been instrumental in the development of the country, with TNPA facilitating trade and influencing growth through the provision of efficient services and port infrastructure. For generations, Durban's marine pilots have played a crucial role in the development of the economy of Durban and the country by bringing ships into the harbour day and night. Pilots are ferried to vessels lying at anchorage by helicopter or by pilot boat in order to steer the vessels safely into port. TNPA is building a new legacy in the international shipping industry with the introduction of female marine pilots, tug masters and harbour masters. We pride ourselves on the transformation we have achieved in recent decades. The evolution of the Port of Durban continues with the reconstruction of berths in Maiden Wharf and Island View, the deepening of berths at our container terminal to accommodate bigger vessels, and the pending construction of our new cruise terminal to cater for this growing sector. Our transformation journey includes improvements to our ship repair facilities under the government's Operation Phakisa program, which sets out to create jobs and develop skills. We are empowered by technology as we strive to compete as a world-class player in the global market. Welcome to the Port of Durban. As custodians of South Africa's port system, Transnet National Port Authority looks to you to help us achieve our vision of creating a smart people's port that serves the surrounding community while driving the growth and prosperity of the city, the region and country through this important gateway.